Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 14.5 Beta 7. This is available to developers and soon to public beta testers. Usually by the time you're watching this video, it's out already, and if it is, I'll link that in the description below. Now this came in at 159 megabytes. That's on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. It was about 120 to 150 megabytes, depending on which device you're using, such as the iPhone 11 that I have here, iPhone 6s Plus, and iPad Pro 12.9 from 2020, which also has iPadOS 14.5 Beta 7 that Apple released today as well, along with watchOS 7.4 Beta 7, tvOS 14.5 Beta 7, and HomePodOS 14.5 Beta 7. So far, they have not released macOS Big Sur 11.3 Beta 7 yet. Now let's take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So we'll go to Settings and then General, then About, and as you can see, the build number is 18E5198A. And this particular build is the third build with an A at the end, which we thought there wouldn't be this many betas, and the last time we had this many betas is with iOS 14's main release. So they're really getting things right, and we'll talk about when to expect the release as what seems to be confirmed by Tim Cook, at least this month anyway. Now, as far as updates, there is no modem update, at least for the iPhone 12 Pro Max or other phones that I've seen. So if you were having connectivity issues specific to maybe connecting to a cell tower, that shouldn't be fixed, or there shouldn't be any major changes there. Now, if you'd like to see more of these videos when I release updates and talk about what's new, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when I push out these videos every day or every week. Also, I have a Telegram and Discord server. If you want to join those, they're in the description below. Now, as far as new features, well, the first thing is Apple released a Find My network today, or made that available to everyone if a third party wants to make Find My devices. So for example, Belkin, as well as a bike, as you can see some of the images here from Apple today, announced that their Find My network is now available to third-party finding experiences. They said this would be available on April 15th and require iOS 14.3 or newer. So they haven't said that 14.5 will be required. It will just be available to everyone. And if you go on an older device, you'll see it already. So if we go on an iPhone 7, for example, and I'll bring in my jet black iPhone 7, and as soon as you open Find My, it talks about the Find My network. It says locate your device on a map even when they're not connected to Wi-Fi or cellular. So we'll go ahead and hit continue. And if you're not seeing the new third-party part at the bottom, go home. Now that we're home, if you go back into Find My, it should be updated with a new option at the bottom. Now, this is on iOS 14.3, so let's go back into Find My, and at the bottom, you now have items. So it's showing up for everyone. It may take a little bit of time, but we'll go to items. And if you go to items and slide up the menu, you can see it says add an item, identify a found item, and then you can tap on Learn More. Now, if we go to Learn More, for some people, this is actually showing a support page. For others, it is not. But if you go to that link, it says keep track of personal items using Find My, and it gives more information about it. And so you can see all about it, supported products, people can be certified, and you can see the products I mentioned before with Belkin, Van Moof bicycles, and Chipolo One Spot, for example. So it gives all that information about it and how it works if you want to know more about that. Now, as far as anything else that's new, there's no new features other than what I've already mentioned that's available to everyone. Apple seems to be doing this more and more where they're adding features to older versions and then just making them available based on time. And so we're seeing that more and more. There's no other obvious features that you can see in this update, and that means we're getting very close to the final version where it will be released to the public. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, as far as the notes are concerned, there's nothing new in the notes as far as what's new or anything that's been resolved. However, issues I was having before that I talked about in the follow-up or a few days later video a few days ago on Sunday were cellular and Wi-Fi switching between 4G and 5G, where I would have to go to airplane mode and turn that on and off to get back to my data, for example. Also, many people were having issues with Bluetooth and widgets disappearing and Siri's voice sometimes not showing up properly or working properly. Also, upon boot up, a flashing logo, which is fixed with 14.5, but there's no mentions of green tint. That was mentioned at the beginning with earlier notes where they've fixed it. Hopefully it's resolved more. Some people have said that it's completely fixed now with Beta 5, Beta 6, and some people have said that it's worse. So I would love to hear your experience in the comments below as far as that goes, but I haven't been able to experience this when I'm in settings, for example, and the screen is really dark, I see no green around the outside edge or anything like that. So I know quite a few people have been experiencing it, but it seems to be fixed for the most part with 14.5. Now, as far as iPadOS 14.5 Beta 7, well, this update has the same sort of things in it. Nothing new that you can physically see other than within Find My. But as far as its performance and everything else, it seems to be okay. Battery life continues to struggle on my iPad, as I've mentioned before, and so far it seems to be the same. So we'll go to the last 10 days. It was charged to 59% while I was updating it, but generally I'm getting about 4 to 5 hours of screen on time, where I should get 10 with this update. So I'll wipe it if it doesn't improve after the final's released and start over again. But so far with iPadOS, it's been doing great. Otherwise, I've had no issues whatsoever on the iPad. Now, as far as battery life with iOS 14.5 Beta 7, this is going to vary greatly depending on device and will take a few days to measure, so I'll be sure to cover that in a follow-up. You can see it's leaving a gap here when I went into settings. That seems to happen often, but we'll go to battery and go to battery health, and battery health on my iPhone 12 Pro Max is 100%. Now, this is going to vary depending on your device, how much you charge it, and more. I've talked about that in other videos, and updates don't affect this capacity. However, if you're on an iPhone 11, 11 Pro, or 11 Pro Max, it could be recalibrating. That started with a new feature with Beta 6 and is here also in Beta 7, and I didn't have it on my iPhone 11 before, but now it's recalibrating. The odd thing is this could take a few weeks, so it will start over again if you go to Beta 7. So it says your battery health reporting system is recalibrating maximum capacity and peak performance capability. This process may take a few weeks. You can learn more, and I'm curious to see what it will be like, but based on what we see as releases, we may not know what this is for a month at this point, based on it having to recalibrate, based on updating over and over. So it should be okay, but let's take a look at battery life on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, which seems to be kind of odd based on how much we're getting, based on what I go to bed with. Normally I go to bed around 50% of my battery life left. If I take a look at yesterday, I got 2 hours and 45 minutes of screen on time, 4 hours and 15 minutes of screen off time, and I used about 40% of my battery. Based on that, I'd get about, if you double it and use 100% of the battery, I'd get anywhere between 6 hours, maybe 6.5 hours of screen on time and 8 to 9 hours of screen off time. Based on that, that's not great battery life. But like I said, I go to bed with 50% of my battery life left. So I have no problem getting through a day, day and a half, maybe even 2 days, depending on normal use. And you can see what I'm using here: Twitter, the lock screen with notifications, mail, sometimes Amazon, although that shouldn't be using background activity. So it's kind of odd that it's doing that. Battery life has not been amazing for me on this, but most people are saying it's improved greatly. So we'll have to see what it's like with a follow-up or a few days later video, usually on Sunday. So far it's okay as far as the lasting through the day, but the numbers are not reflecting what I'm experiencing. Now, like I said on the iPad, performance seems to be good. I haven't had any lockups or freezing. You'll see everything's nice and smooth as I scroll through. No problems here whatsoever. The same is true on the iPhone 11 and generally older phones as well right away. However, it can take a few days for things to finish in the background, but let's go ahead and take a look at the benchmark. Since performance seems to be very smooth and everything's working well, let's go into Geekbench. And I did run benchmarks twice. As you can see, I scored 1,593 for single core, 4,223 for multi-core. Now, the first time I ran this, it was a little bit slower or a little bit less, and generally over time it will speed up. But as you can see, here's the better scores, or the better scores on top, and then here's the last time with Beta 6. So it's a little bit higher in multi-core, but a little bit lower in single core. Generally, it's going to be fast. Beta 6 was nice and fast. This shows that it's just consistent at this point. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and the other devices so you can get a general idea of what to expect with yours if you're running benchmarks. Now, from left to right, I have the 12.9-inch iPad Pro from 2020. In the middle is the iPhone 11, and on the right is the iPhone 12 Pro Max. If your scores are generally around this, within 100 or so, you should be performing just fine. They usually increase a little bit over the next few days as things continue to finish processing or indexing in the background. Now, as far as if you should install iOS 14.5 Beta 7, and if you're already on Beta 6, I would say absolutely. Even if you're optimizing your battery health or you're calibrating that or recalibrating that, I would say install it either way, since Apple has obviously updated and fixed some of those things in the background. So I would definitely do that. Install that if you're already on Beta 6, for example, or earlier betas. Betas are meant to test things, and of course, if you're having issues, make sure to report it in feedback. However, if you're on iOS 14.4.2 and wondering if you should upgrade to try and fix green tint or maybe some other issue you're having, at this point, it's fairly safe to do that if you've used betas before. However, if you're still wondering if you're going to have issues and you're concerned about that, then I would hold off and wait until the final release. Now, as far as iOS 14.5 release candidate and the public release, well, we have a little bit more information on that based from a Tim Cook interview that was on the Sway podcast with Kara Swisher. So you can listen to that if you're interested in that and privacy and more. But as far as he said in that interview, he said that the privacy issues would be addressed in the upcoming update, which would be out in a few weeks. A few weeks from the time of recording, which was March 27th, would put us at the week of the 11th or 18th generally. Now, we weren't sure exactly when he was talking about. Based on when the podcast released, it would be the week of the 18th, would be a few weeks away. So based on that, I would expect a release candidate next week with a final release on the week of the 18th. However, Apple has pushed out a release candidate as soon as a couple days after the last beta, and then pushed out the update the following week. If we're going by when they're releasing those Find My updates, it would be on the 15th. If we're not, it would be the following week based off the information we have. Beta 8 is highly unlikely since Apple hasn't done that in a very long time. So it's possible, but unlikely. And whether or not we see an April event with AirTags, or maybe Apple's just not making AirTags at this point, we'll have to wait and see. But hopefully we have some sort of product release later this month with an Apple event as well. And then, of course, in June is iOS 15, and we should see that on the 7th with WWDC 2021 or the Worldwide Developer Conference. We'll see what's in iOS 15, watchOS 8, macOS 12, tvOS 15, and more, and we should see iOS 14 or iOS 15 Beta 1 and iPadOS 15 Beta 1 released to developers on that day. That's what I'm looking most forward to, but I think we'll see that as well as multiple betas until the final release in September. So I'm looking forward to all of that. It's been an exciting time, but a very odd release this year with Beta 7, for example. Now be sure to check back on Sunday when I do a follow-up, talk about battery life, bugs, what they've fixed, and more as we figure out what's actually fixed in this and if everything's been resolved and it's ready to go. I usually release those on Sunday. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.